So I finally watched Blade Runner and I'm very mixed on it. I don't hate it, I don't dislike it, but I was never blown away by it by any other aspect other than its technical achievements. And speaking of those technical achievements, they are extremely worthy of praise. The world Ridley Scott and his team managed to create is nothing less than astonishing. So much work and effort was put into immersing the audience into the universe of Blade Runner, which is especially impressive given the period it was created in. It really goes to show that with set design like it, it's possible to make any kind of world in the vast language of film. However, what I want you to consider is that film is comprised of much more than its technical achievements. There's also acting, pacing and character, all of which Blade Runner is lacking in some regard. Firstly, I don't really like Deckard. I find him to be a bit of a boring protagonist. He hardly has any personality and is a husk of a character. On paper he sounds, frankly epic, a retired bounty hunter, the best of his kind, brought back into service to take out 4 dangerous replicants. But in reality he's just a bit of a boring asshole. Harrison Ford tries his best with what he's given, but it just doesn't really work. He comes across as extremely wooden and robotic, and when he's not doing that he's putting the Harrison Ford compressed baby face. As well as this, every scene with him is remarkably boring. I found myself checking to see how long I had left fairly frequently, and also considered turning the movie off and going to sleep. I'm sorry, but incredibly well done special effects and an interesting side story isn't enough to make me watch 10 minutes of Harrison Ford zooming in on a JPEG to solve a mystery I don't really care about.
Pull out track right. Stop. Center and pull back. Stop. Track 45 right. Stop. Center and stop. And here's 34 to 36.
Speaking of which, the film's pace is incredibly slow, and I have no gripe against slow-moving movies. Some of my favourite movies, including the sequel to this very film, are slow-moving and methodical, but the reason those films work is because there's usually something keeping me there, some kind of intrigue. The opening of the movie with the empathy test really got me engaged. I was invested in the way the scene ended was a shock.
I'll tell you about my mother.
But a couple of minutes afterwards, it lost me. There is no intrigue to Blade Runner because the objective Deckard is given is to retire 4 replicants. Therefore, you already know how the movie is going to play out, and you already know Rachel is a replicant, so as a result I'm left ridiculously bored. The only intrigue or mystery the movie has is its question of, is Deckard a replicant? But there's almost nothing in the movie to imply that he is, or he isn't, other than that stupid unicorn scene or what Ridley Scott says.
And how
he's a replicant.
Besides, the question of whether or not Deckard is a replicant really doesn't change that much in the story. Deckard is giving no past other than that he's a former Blade Runner. So what changes if he's a replicant? The character undergoes no change because he has no past that shaped him. His personality cannot change, and despite the idea the film puts forward of, does a past and memories really make a machine more human? It doesn't really apply to Deckard, as he is given no past other than that he's a Blade Runner. There's also no change to the story. Deckard's objective is no different whether he is or he isn't. Debatably, his art takes on a different meaning as a result if he's human. Then it's a story of a man learning to accept and become equal to a new life form. If he isn't, then he begins to let go of his shackles and sympathise with his own kind. But I would argue that's still a minor change. Ambiguity in film can be a great thing. It encourages the audience to reflect on the story and start discussion, as well as appreciate the signs of a clever script. But its implementation in Blade Runner is clumsy and rather pointless in my opinion. The only thing that was keeping me invested in the plot was the character of Roy Batty, played wonderfully by Rutger Hauer. Firstly, Hauer does a great job with the role and steals every scene he's in. He brings such a threatening vulnerability to the role, and I couldn't imagine anyone better suited to playing that character. Roy's story of an android wanting to live a little longer in order to truly experience his life was so moving and captivating that I want it to be the story, and it probably should have been. His speech at the end is one of the most poignant and moving pieces of dialogue I've ever heard in a film.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time. Like tears in rain. Time to die.
But he hardly gets any screen time, is instead replaced by a trite and forced romance between Deckard and Rachel. Apparently, Harrison Ford and Sean Young hated each other behind the scenes, and it clearly shows in their exchanges because during what's meant to be a touching and romantic scene, it comes across as if Deckard is trying to force himself on her. The film also suffers due to the actors' lack of chemistry, as it makes their romance less believable as a result. They don't seem to be attracted to one another, but instead begrudgingly cooperating with each other. It's a very weird romance and it doesn't really work. Overall, I would say Blade Runner was not what I was hoping for it to be in terms of themes and character, but was blown away by the impeccable art direction and stellar performance and character of Rutger Hauer. It has so many neat elements that, if done right, could result in a stellar movie. Which is what the sequel 2049 delivers. If you want what Blade Runner is missing, just watch that. It has an intriguing story and mystery behind it, clever and unique themes about the question of what it means to be human, and a fantastic protagonist that's full of depth and character. If great set design and costumes is your thing, check this out. Maybe I'll get more out of it after rewatches, but for now I'm giving Blade Runner a 6 out of 10.